5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Peace be with you. These are the first words that Jesus says to the apostles when he appears to them after the resurrection. Peace be with you. But for many Catholics, in the times in which we live, where the church is at, not literally our parish churches, but where the global church is at least in some places, there's not necessarily a lot of peace. In fact, in some cases, there's a lot of confusion and even angst and turmoil over what's going on in some conversations happening in some part of the church. So how are we as Catholics to respond when not just priests, but even bishops, archbishops, even cardinals are talking about the faith in a way that really challenges what we believe the Catholic Church actually teaches? That's what we're going to be talking about today on Ignition. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, and we want to set your faith ablaze so that you might live the adventure that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Before we get into today's topic, we want you to know that we love listener feedback. So if you've got questions about today's episode, or if you have ideas about future episodes, please contact us. The easiest way to do so is by email, and the address is ignition@sfcatholic.org. Again, ignition@sfcatholic.org. I am once again joined in studio by my co-host, Renae. Renae.
What?
Before, I haven't shared an email with you that I got just the other week, praising Robin as my co-host. And
Thank you for
that. No, truthfully. And there's actually, this was a listener who emailed in, has a question that she'd like us to address, which I want to address actually sometime soon. I'll tell you what it's about, just so you can start to think.
Oh, okay, good.
What happened between Jesus' death on the cross and his resurrection? One of our listeners wants us to
There's
talk
some
about
good
that.
stuff.
There's some good stuff. So we'll talk about that in a future episode of Ignition. But she did say she loves Robin. What she said, I think Renae and Robin. I think it was Renae and Robin in that order. So
She just went by alphabetical.
and
really play no favorites.
And really appreciates what you,
Thank you.
bring
Yes.
to the show. So I'll share that so you know that I'm just making. Because I won't make up a compliment.
No,
like
you
that.
wouldn't.
No. So you and I, we had one plan. We were going to continue our never-ending series.
Truly
the
be
Mass,
never-ending
at this
unless
rate.
we get back to
right.
it.
So we do have to. But as you and I were talking about, I always like to have something that is really compelling to my co-host, and I know that for you, the Mass just isn't compelling.
Oh,
so. Not true.
Only when it's on the radio.
Right.
It's not compelling to me. I don't know why, but
but no, because we can continue our Mass series at any time.
Yes.
Was there anything else? And the topic that I sort of teased in the introduction came up. So you and I, a few months ago, maybe several months ago now, we did an episode sort of addressing, when you hear in the media, Pope Francis said X, and usually it's some juicy, hot button take. We talked about that, and your big thing, as somebody who literally spends their day doing communications, and is a real life journalist.
A real life, yeah.
Talked about your big thing is always you got to verify.
Yes.
Is that really what he said in its proper context?
From the original source, proper context, yes.
Yep. And we even talked about, okay, even if it is all that, you verified it, it's still trouble. How would we deal with that? So we talked about that previously, and that might come up a little bit today. But as you and I were talking about potential topics, the reality that in the church, there are actually erroneous views.
Right.
Views that are contrary to what the church teaches. That there, and I'm not trying to be coy here. Like in Germany,
right?
Just to be explicit
let's
here,
lay it on the table.
like in Germany, it's not that every German bishop is crazy, wacko.
Not all of them are on board for what's going on.
Right, exactly. But there are a number of leaders in the church, ordained and lay. This is not just a clerical problem. That are really advocating positions that are definitely contrary to what the church has always taught. And it's usually around, not exclusively, but it's around sexual morality, usually. But also things like who can and can't be ordained and so on, but usually around sexual morality.
Right.
And when we don't avoid the hot button topics on Ignition or Catholic Views, the show that you host. We try to address those. There's a lot of other things we can talk about, and we do.
Yeah.
but
we got to do a show every week, so we got to come up with stuff to do.
Right. But you and I are both aware that there are people who, you hear about things going on in Germany or even, random bishops, even in our country, who are holding views that at least seem, I want to be, give the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
They seem to run contrary to what the church teaches.
Right. Because sometimes they actually are contrary. And sometimes, again, context matters.
Right. And sometimes, again, it's possible sometimes that it just came out poorly.
Yes.
Like they didn't express themselves.
Yeah, they are human and not always
Right.
so great about
Right.
using language properly.
Right. Exactly. So there are, but you sort of, if you poke your head into the Catholic media world, you're probably going to come across reference to some of these leaders in the church, again, whether they're ordained or
Right.
laity. And the views, and a lot of Catholics will look at that, especially now looking at the ordained, like, well, I mean, these are priests, or these are not popes. These are bishops. These are archbishops. These are cardinal archbishops, and they're holding this, and it can cause people to, well, at least ask questions or cause confusion, as I said, or even doubt what they've always believed, because now you have somebody who is in fact a leader in the church, ordained to teach the faith, who is espousing views, advocating views, strongly advocating views, which run contrary to what I, as Georgian Catholic, have always believed to be the case. So it understandably causes, like, okay, well, what? I mean, is that right?
Right.
Is that wrong? Is what I've always thought right, or is that wrong? And again, that confusion and even doubt can creep in.
And there are a couple of other, I think, not people, but institutions that can cause confusion too. Catholic universities, Catholic seminaries sometimes that aren't quite where they should be. Even Catholic hospitals that are doing things that they're not supposed to be doing can really cause confusion. And not only teachings, but also lack of action on parts of bishops. I think that's been one in the U.S. for a while.
Right, exactly.
Around a couple of topics.
So that can cause confusion or angst or frustration and anger.
Yes.
Sometimes understandably so.
Right.
So I think it's worth, as you and I were chatting, we both thought it'd be worth talking about that reality and what we do about that.
Yeah.
And what it means.
Yeah. I think so I don't know where you want to go, but the first thing, like, how in the heck does this happen? Do you have any thoughts around that? Like, how do we have bishops who are going so far, what seems like and what sometimes is astray?
I think I do one of the same question. In fact, just a few weeks ago, I said to one of our priests, who's a friend, why does he think this?
Right.
It was about one bishop who I'm not going to name in this case, but they've written public articles, and this is why I'm not going to name the bishop, because Renae, as a trained theologian, I've read the articles, and I'm like, no, it's dumb.
Oh. Wow.
It's bad theology. Not bad in the sense of erroneous, just like bad theology.
Like bad reasoning?
Yes. Yeah. Like the arguments were like you can make good arguments about anything. I mean,
if you
about
really
almost
try,
anything.
yeah.
If you really tried, you can craft a really good argument about almost anything.
Or at least an argument that sounds good.
That sounds good, right? And these arguments just did not sound good.
Right.
What? I mean, anybody who knows anything about Catholic theology, anybody with certainly a master's in theology, maybe a bachelor's in theology,
Sure.
would look at this particular piece of writing that I'm vaguely referring to, and in fact, this church leader really did get, in a charitable way, castigated. And I don't know if you can castigate somebody charitably. They got critiqued in a charitable way. So in that particular case, I said to a priest friend, "What?
Yeah.
Where is he?" So here's the thing. This is just a matter of historical fact.
Sure.
The church, there are a few things, at least a few things, that first and foremost come to mind. The church is an organization, it's an institution with power. And there will be people in every organization, unfortunately, even the Catholic Church, every organization, every institution who seek power. And who
even priests and bishops.
And so who will climb the ladder.
Sure.
Now, this is why in the one instance, I don't know the inner motivation at this point of the bishop that I'm thinking of. So that's why I'm being more cautious. But just globally, historically, we know that their motivation, the motivation of some bishops has been more power.
Yeah, and historically, that is certainly the case.
Absolutely.
You can find many examples.
Exactly. Right. Where you have the ability to have an impact. What kind of impact doesn't necessarily matter. I can have an impact and change things.
Well, and sometimes bishops, priests might feel like it's easier to have an impact by going with the flow of society where it's going now.
Yep.
So rather than bucking that and staying with the church.
Exactly. So I'm starting with some negative reasons why, and then I think you can give a positive spin.
Okay.
Second negative reason, personal morality.
Yeah.
In some of these cases, we know as a matter of history that there have been church leaders, priests, even bishops, and bishops who are cardinals, who have been moral monsters in their personal lives. And the interesting thing here, Renae, Renae, is that there are examples in history of church leaders who were moral monsters who didn't try actually to change church teaching to accord with their personal proclivities. The most notorious, morally awful pope in history is Alexander VI, who fathered multiple children, as far as we know, with multiple women, and elevated them to important roles within the church, called them his nephews, and he made them bishops and cardinals.
What?
But Alexander VI never tried to change church teaching on, say, clerical celibacy or the immorality of sleeping around. But we have, so that's like, huh.
But that makes you wonder if he was in today's society where those things are more acceptable.
Who knows?
Would he be trying to?
Maybe. So I do think in some cases, unfortunately, I think it is a matter of trying to align church teaching with what I want. Now, okay, so I think those are two negative reasons. I do also think in some cases it comes from a good intention. This is it's easy to go with the flow, right? Yes. Well, I think this is where the idea of the important idea of accompaniment actually gets a bad rap.
Oh, right.
I think this desire to change church teaching can come from a positive motivation in the sense that, just where people are at right now, they're not in a place really to receive the fullness of what the church teaches. So we got to meet them where they're at. To which I would say a hearty amen. But we don't leave them where they're at.
Right.
We call them to more. We call them to greatness. And that's how I think. Again, really giving the benefit of the doubt in some cases, it really is out of a desire to meet people where they're at, but that's only part of the equation.
Yeah.
Do
you think that's, well, you aren't going to be able to answer that, but do you think that's where the German bishops are coming from, at least some of them?
I would hope some of them. I don't think it's all about, and to be honest, I don't know that with any of them, the German bishops, it's about their personal morality and trying to align it.
Right.
I kind of think maybe,
it's a different world over there.
It is.
As far as the Catholic Church is concerned.
And again, I hope I'm wrong about this. It's a really wealthy church.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
In Germany, the church is funded by the state.
Right.
And the state, of course, gets its money from taxes. So in Germany, you and I would indicate on our German equivalent of our tax forms that we're Catholic. And automatically, it might be 10%. I'm not sure, though.
Wow.
Automatically, a certain chunk of
your income
goes to the church that's why a lot of Catholics in Germany are like, I'm not part of this church. But then they'll be threatened with excommunication. If you're a Catholic and you don't indicate on your taxes that you're a Catholic, yeah.
Okay, so the government knows you're a Catholic somehow. You've registered and they have
the
that
parish knows you're a Catholic.
No, I know.
Well,
but how does the parish? There's
tax
some stuff
form.
going on here that is really terrifying.
It's very,
I'm
very,
just learning
very
right now.
un-American or contrary to the American way of doing things.
Yes.
There is not the church and state. It's not like the church is running the state in that sense.
No,
but the relationship with them
like
is a lot cozier. It's a lot cozier.
Yes.
So the government collects taxes from me as a Catholic, and part of that goes to the Catholic Church.
So you can't just put down that you know religion.
You could.
And you would still get in trouble, though.
Because if you are Catholic, so you're going to get in trouble with your bishops.
But they're only going to know if the government tells your bishop that you did that. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Somehow the church becomes aware.
Yikes.
Yeah. So
I will not be moving to Germany anytime soon.
I've got a brother-in-law in Germany. We've never really talked about his thoughts on this sort of thing. He is a faithful Catholic. I'm sure he puts down.
He gives him his 10%.
Yeah. His daughter actually is a laywoman who works for the church in Germany. My niece, I've never asked her either about her thoughts on all things German.
There are some
church.
dioceses there that are still okay, though.
Yeah, even within bad dioceses, you can still be a good Catholic.
Oh,
bad
yes,
diocese.
of course.
So this kind of gets to, all right, so what do we do about this?
Yeah.
So
it is confusing
It
to
is. Right.
everyone.
Right. So, folks, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to or watching Ignition. Well, you probably just wouldn't just tune in and be watching. If you're just tuning in, you're probably on your radio. You're listening to Ignition. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, talking today with Renae Kranz about the confusion that can arise when you've got leaders in the church around the world who are advocating views, just bad views contrary with the church teaches.
Yeah.
And so we've been talking about why that can happen, the motivations for that, how that can happen. And I want to talk now, what do we do about it?
Right.
And I think this is where...
Because there is one other thing that I'm thinking too, and this maybe will lead into it too. So the German bishops are in their synodal way thingy, whatever. So I think there's a lot of concern from Catholics around the world who are seeing that happen in this German, which is not the synod on synodality.
Correct.
But they sound awfully similar.
Yeah.
And we're thinking over here, wait, when they do this, what's going to happen? What is this not going to be the church I think it is?
Right.
By the time we're done. So I think there's that those two things are connected.
Right.
To each other.
Because I'm with those who are hypothesizing that the German bishops, among other things, are trying to set the agenda for the synod on synodality.
Right.
By if they can push things in this direction in their country, that might be able to have an impact on the direction of the church more globally through the synod, the synod on synodality.
I feel like it might backfire on them. I hope
there are increasing number of bishops, including in Europe, definitely in the U.S., who are vocally criticizing, and laity as well.
Yes.
I mean, just in our diocese last month we had George Weigel speaking, and he was on Catholic Views, your show, talking about Vatican II, and George Weigel, who's a noted Catholic public intellectual, he's been not uncharitably, but publicly critical, rightly so, of the synodal way. It's what the Germans are doing.
Yeah, all of that. And he's not always so sure about what the synod on synodality is going to bring, too.
Yeah.
So I just think there's a lot of caution there.
So what do we do about that?
Yeah.
I do think the one thing is, okay, if you're always putting your head in the sewer, it's always going to smell bad.
I did not expect that.
I think one thing is, especially for those of us who are sort of news junkies and sort of into this sort of thing, there is something about like where, you're always following this and you got to take a break.
Yes.
So
you get kind of addicted to what is wrong with these people?
Exactly. Yes, there is a real there is a real addiction there.
Yes.
Like, people are always, for goodness sake, there is a term for this. When you're always in an uproar about something.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to,
but that can be a real thing.
Yes.
Where people are always indignant.
Yes.
Like it's an ongoing indignation. Like just relax.
Yes.
I want to go back to how I started the show. Do you remember the first words I said in this episode? The very first.
Peace be with you.
Yes. Jesus doesn't want us to be always in a tizzy about what the heck some wacko bishop in some place is doing. Because, Renae, here's the thing. Not in our diocese.
Right.
Not in our region.
Right.
You know, we are blessed in our diocese with our diocese, our state, our region.
Praise God.
We are blessed with certainly, and I'm not saying, I don't know if Bishop listens to Ignition on a regular basis or not. I'm just saying.
He always listens to Catholic views.
Well, of course,
never.
but never. No, we're blessed with really good bishops.
Yes.
So that's not an issue here, but so we should be attentive to. I think it is important to be attentive to what's going on in the world, in the church around the world. But if you find yourself in a perpetual state of angst because of what the wacko German bishops are doing, take a break.
Right.
The Lord, peace be with you. Awareness is one thing, so it can prompt us to, in this case, I don't know what else we can do then, pray,
Right.
storm heaven with our prayers. Lord, please, like, for the sake of these men in and of themselves, let alone the flocks that they're responsible for, please, like, help them to see the light and so on. Again, because in some instances, it's not just bad media coverage.
Yeah,
they're advocating positions that are
Yes.
contrary with the
Yes.
churches.
They are.
So, okay, I know that goes on. I don't immerse myself in the latest things out of Germany,
Right.
Because it'd be bad for my spiritual and mental and emotional health.
Yes.
That's one thing. Secondly, Jesus did not give the charism, the gift of infallibility, to every certainly priest, not every bishop. Only one bishop has the charism of infallibility. It's the Bishop of Rome, and even there, the Pope, and even there. It's not something that he just, everything he says automatically is guaranteed to be infallible.
Yeah, you mentioned when we were chatting earlier that every personal thing he says is not.
No. Even if it's publicly known that he said it.
To everyone around the world.
If he said it to everybody, just because he said it out loud doesn't mean it's necessarily infallible. Is it in that case, is it formally taught by? That's what you have to look at. Infallibility only applies in certain circumstances where it's possible for a pope. It's definitely possible for popes to have heretical personal views,
And that's happened.
and that's happened in history.
So if Pope Francis was saying some of the things the bishops in Germany were saying, so does someone rightly chastise a pope in that case, and who does that?
Right, and that's where I think we pray, as with the bishops, we pray that for his conversion of mind, and however the Lord will bring that about. Obviously, I can't just pick up the phone.
Right.
Your Holiness.
It would be someone, to me, it seems like it would be someone like a George Weigel or someone like that who might pop up and say,
and even he doesn't have a direct line to Pope Francis in his case, but he knows people who do.
Yes.
So that's how that might happen.
Yeah.
So depending on
what it is.
A Chris or a Renae as opposed to a George Weigel. Right. I do think, again, when we talked about this, we've talked about this more than once.
Yes.
Fraternal charity.
Yeah.
It's out of love for the person. And in this case, especially because they do have power,
influence,
and influence that we have to be attentive to that. So I think, again, the Pope, not being a completely different case, but in this particular case, Pope Francis himself being a different case because he's not publicly advocating.
Right.
I wouldn't say for positions that are explicitly contrary to what the church is.
Right.
But we have bishops in Germany and other places who are. So don't be too preoccupied with that quote unquote bad news.
Yep.
But also, again, the charism of infallibility doesn't apply to them. So throughout the history of and this is to me where knowledge, some basic knowledge of the history of the church is helpful. Yes, I should give respect and obedience to bishops because of their role in the church. Certainly my bishop and my pope, our pope. But I should, because they're human beings, love for them. But if there is, as there are, bishops in places that are advocating errors, false ideas, then I want them to change.
Right.
But I need to recognize that this has always happened in history.
Yes.
I don't like the church is not going to hell in a handbasket in a brand new way.
Right.
My go-to example is one of the first major heresies in the church. It's called Arianism, named after Arius, the arch heretic Arius, who denied that Jesus was literally God. And Arius was an archbishop.
Yeah.
And St. Jerome, in describing, not too much long after the fact, talking about the Arian heresy, said, the church awoke and groaned, or the world awoke and groaned, for it's found itself Arian. So many bishops, it seems that the majority of bishops at the time were Arians.
Yikes.
Not maliciously so.
Right.
Not because they're out to destroy people's faith.
Fell into it.
But they fell into it. The majority of bishops.
Yeah.
Not the Bishop of Rome. And not all sorts of bishops, including Athanasius, who is the great defender of orthodoxy in that time. But okay, we're nowhere near that. There's like 4,000 or 5,000 bishops in the world today. We're nowhere near the majority of bishops holding to these false views that are being championed by a relatively small number.
Right.
So I think we need to take a breath, take a step back. That doesn't mean that we're minimizing what's happening today.
Right.
But I think we do need to recognize that in history, unfortunately, this has happened. Again, whatever the motivations might be, it has unfortunately happened that there have been times when many leaders in the church, many ordained men, many bishops have held views that are contrary to the faith. Yeah. So we trust in the Lord. And the final thing that I really want to point out, just as we're running out of time, we are blessed in our day and age to have things like the Catechism of the Catholic Church, where the church's teaching is expressed with a great clarity. Yeah. That wasn't the case for a long time. So we can say, we can, if I'm wondering what's going on, I can look to what the church teaches in the Catechism and trust in that. Yeah. And trust in the Lord that he's going to steer this ship that is his church the right way.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Renae.
You bet.
And folks, that will wrap up this episode of Ignition. Again, you can email us ignition@sfcatholic.org with any ideas for future episodes or questions about this one. Until next time, God bless you.